and that.
Oh, right.
Don will tell you there's pockets of kiwi fruit.
We'll talk later.
Time
Sorry,
to shut up, eh?
The live is just starting now.
Thanks, Janisha.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
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 This one's always slow.
It is past now.
Right, well, good morning all. It's now 9:30 and I'd like to welcome you to this policy committee PP 22/3. Welcome to councillors, staff and any members of the public that are there. Or I don't see any. We have one apology from Councillor Marsh. Can I have a mover to seconder for that, please? Councillor Daly, Councillor Thwaites. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against no. I declare that carried. There are no considerations of late items. Are there any declarations of interest? No, it would appear not. There are no public excluded items and we have no request for attendance at a public forum. So we go straight to the agenda. There's a paper there. If anybody got any questions that there may be of staff. Margaret, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, on page 7 of the report, it talks about the second at Havelock North, but no mentions of the $80 million that Havelock North spent on fixing the system. And I just wonder, as we review the Three Waters and everything to do with it, it would be interesting to know actually what Havelock North actually did. But nobody talks about it. But they did solve the problem with an $80 million investment. Just wondered if you knew.
Well, we can get the answer to you, but this is around the drinking water standards.
Yep.
Going forward and source water. So James, you have a question, and then Mark Dean.
Yeah, thanks. I just have a question about what the implications are. And I'm referring to page 8 here. What are the implications for our intention to discharge wastewater to land, given that this will inevitably have to be within the Swarmer 2 zone of a third party's bore or river take?
Good morning, everyone.
Tony, do you want to cover that one off?
Good morning. I've got Paul Vandenberg with me today, who's more of a technical expert on these matters. I wonder if that question could be repeated perhaps for Paul, please.
Yeah, happy to do so. So the question's about, we intend to discharge water to land, or that's one of the proposals. And given that that will inevitably have to be within Swarmer 2 zone of a third party's bore or river take, what are the implications for us there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's something that we've been struggling with a little bit with the Ministry for Health and the drinking water assessors where our bores are located in the rural, we have to have a 5 metre exclusion zone from stock and everything else. And our bores were originally constructed as secure deep water bores through confined aquifers. And but in some situations we have had OSET conditioned on-site effluent treatment being built around us due to the development in the areas. So the idea is that we have to prove and show. Sorry, we have to prove and show that the risks that are there that are for us are being managed one way or another, and that includes effluent treatment.
Yeah,
James, I think in essence what it means is where your bores are, you need to have an exclusion zone around those, as opposed to discharging to river and having a wastewater upstream or downstream. So I think it's, for us, we're in a reasonably good position.
Yeah,
Yes.
there are two issues though. One is how our bores are affected by other people's activities, and then there's our potential discharges to land affecting other people's bores.
Well, somebody might want, my understanding of the reading of this is, it is, if you have a bore, it is your responsibility to make sure that it's not impacted by any of those issues. So our discharges shouldn't really impact on anybody else.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mark Dean, and then Margaret Murray-Beans again.
I'm a little bit concerned about bore water take because the bore that we have up at the Naturally Native Nursery is 100 metres deep. The water that's being drawn doesn't just come from within the few hectares of area, it comes from a huge distance away. How can we, under the current knowledge and science, assure that if there was any chemicals, nitrates, whatever, going into that water aquifer from miles and miles away, which it probably is, how can we assure that just an area of 5 metres around the bore is going to do the job? I don't believe it is, and I don't think the science is there to actually, give us the knowledge about where that water source is coming from.
I think there's two points, Paul, you might want to comment on. One is where you source the water from, and that's what these regulations are around. But it's when you work out the aquifer or wherever you're going for the water, you have to ensure that you have the quality standards in place to make sure you either remove whatever the contaminants are in there, or do you go somewhere else? But Paul, you might want to work out those two different points. Paul?
Yes, certainly. I will comment on that. The 5 metre exclusion zone. Yeah, you're absolutely correct, Your Worship. Is that is around protecting the borehead, where we have got our structure in place to keep cattle and stock away from that, so that where the mechanical devices are, the pipework coming out of the ground, which is intersected the aquifers, that is not compromised. And of course, there's still discussion at the moment in the drinking water standards around boreheads being below ground and above ground. So that's another factor, and that's what this is all about. The second thing is the wider issue of the larger aquifer. And absolutely right. Aquifers are huge, and they are not just localized on over a hectare or 2 hectares. They're over thousands of hectares, or can be, and the influence is by all of the people and all the users of that greater parcel of land. So this is a question that was put back to Regional Council through the TA's meeting with Regional Council, is that looking at the source water risk management plans, we don't have the jurisdiction or necessarily the ability to manage what every single owner of land does over the greater area. So that is still an outstanding question. How do we effectively, as a council and the greater community, how do we effectively manage what's happening on all of those parcels of land and the greater area, forestry included, to protect that water source? We don't. There is no absolute finite answer to that at the moment. The other part to that is that what we have done, though, is our bores that we have here at council are hundreds of meters deep, from 160 to 300 odd meters deep, and have gone through secure layers in the ground where the ground is not fractured, and the water takes hundreds of years to get down there, or can be hundreds of years old. Some of our waters, most of our waters, over 99 years old. So that was the intent of having secure groundwater effects bores, so that what is happening on the land doesn't immediately affect our water in the short term. In fact, by the time it gets down there, it will be well and truly filtered out.
And I think just come back, this is around the source of the water and that 5 metre exclusion zone. That's all
Yes.
we're talking about. The three waters that's one of the underlying issues, is the contamination of the underlying aquifers. And that's where the government's proposal is taking a catchment view of those, because our water, in terms of the underground aquifers, starts up in the Rotorua Lakes or even further back in Mount Rua, the slopes of Mount Ruapehu, coming through the Taupo Lakes. And so the underground aquifers are all impacted by that. But this bit of legislation, we're looking at here, is just at the head of the bore. So
Correct.
we've got, Margaret Murray-Benge, Anne Henry, Murray Granger, and Grant Daly.
Yes, thank you. Paul, we had, of course, took our water differently 20 years ago and had a much lower grading of our water. So the bore system has worked well for our council. Are you saying that you're confident that the 5 metre protection around the bore head is adequate?
That's the staff's recommendation that we, as per this, on page 6. Anne Henry, you got a question?
Anyway, sir.
The 5 metre exclusion zone works for us in the sense that we can build mechanically and by structures, civil structures, that we can protect the bore heads where we take water from. Yes, we can. What we have learned over the time, though, is that when we do buy land around bores, that we will buy more than just the 5 metres by 5 metres, because of the whole of life operational requirements for bore heads. So we will be purchasing larger lands in the future.
Anne Henry?
Are we speaking generally about the whole document? I just missed the beginning of the meeting. Asking a question about the whole document.
Yes, if you've got a question on the document, but it's our recommendation that is what we're talking about. So you want to ask your question?
I've got a question about, see, we've got an expert here. I mean, we live in a pristine area, but we put a lot of SHIT into it. And 100 years to filter down through the layers, and Kaikain and all that sort of stuff. And we've got people like Claymart, who hopefully now are not putting stuff into the ocean, but are holding it in a holding place, and, it filters down. I'm concerned about in 100 years with it, that gets down to the bottom layers and it gets into the aquifers. What are we going to have? What are we doing for our future generations? I mean, do you see this as a problem? I mean, I'm a complete novice. I don't know.
Sorry, and that's the question we had from Mark Dean earlier on, and we covered that off.
Sorry.
This bit is about just around the bore head.
Right. I asked before. Yeah.
Hi. I'm listening to what the people are saying, and I agree that the 5 metre area around a bore head for localised contamination or interference makes sense, but in the document, in table line 5, it implies that we are going for a 10 to 30 metre restriction rather than agreeing that 5 is okay. Am I just misreading that, or is it not well worded?
Tony, do you might want to comment on that?
I'm just reading that point now. A 10 to 30 metre restriction on activities around bores would be more successful and beneficial than 5 metres. However, when we consider existing bores for water supplies, there are many around the country where this could not be achieved retrospectively due to land boundaries and existing infrastructure or land development. That was the reason given.
So,
in our report.
we're saying ideally 10 to 30 years, but given some historic situations, and that'd be existing use, you're limiting to the 5.
That's correct.
It doesn't come across strong enough.
So would you want that made a bit stronger?
The question is, do you agree that a 5 metre radius around a water source bore gives enough protection? The answer is yes.
You picked that up, Tony?
Yeah, I picked that up. I've seen here we've asked for consistency there, 5 metres, but we did make it clear that there are reasons why 5 metres may not be practical in some cases.
Right, thanks. Grant Daly, you've got a question? All right, so there doesn't appear to be any more questions. There's a recommendation there on page 6. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Murray Benge, Councillor Anne Henry. If there's no discussion, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Put the hand up. Against no, I declare that carried. Thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of